like to welcome writer, director, producer James Mangold. Mr. Mangold, I'd love to start with you. You've worked with a lot of this group for a long time. How do you assemble your crew? How does it all start? Avails, you start thinking about what you're going to do next, and you kind of see who you get to.
Vibe. I mean, you credits sometimes it's just someone unique. It's someone who gets recommended, but everyone but Tod has been with me for a bunch of movies. I mean, a host of movies here, and so that is the result of a really wonderful relationship that has yielded really great results. But the real answer to the question is movies are a reflection of the people who make them, and so in my position, you're just really after golden souls. You're after people who are here for the right reasons, who collaborate. That's one of the big, being a director, being a hyphenate, but also being a director, you kind of feel like a brain in a jar making a movie because you're kind of commenting on everything but touching nothing, and it makes you, I have to break out of my jar at some point and grab the camera or invade Ari's racks and go, what about this? Or just touch things, just because I feel like I'm wrapped in, a Tupperware container. And what all these people represent and all the other people who we've had the joy of collaborating with in the movies are people who seem to recognize that it's wonderful to blur the lines, that I'm really allergic to people who are overly turfy on a movie, like that's my shit, don't touch it kind of stuff. And I love it that, use Arianne as an example, I love it that she can get involved with the production designer on the way the room looks as much as he can get involved in what they're wearing, and they can both talk to the DP. No one feels like, whoa, why is this happening? And there's a lot of that on crews, and it's useless. It's only useful for the protection of the ego of the one person of that department they're protecting. It's not useful for the movie being a kind of a collaborative effort toward a common goal.
Right. Since we're talking about a complete unknown, which this group has just seen, can you all talk about when you got involved, like what your starting point was? Let's start with you, Arianne, like how you started, and what was your first challenge?
Well, Jim called me up and said, I think I'm gonna make a Bob Dylan movie, and you should read the book, Dylan Goes Electric by Elijah Wald, and I'm not ready to send you the script. And so I got the book and I read it, and it was crickets for a little while, and COVID hit, and so that was the start for me. It was really great to read a book and absorb the script. Actually, I hadn't done that before. It seems like an obvious thing, but it was really, really great. The script was really exciting. And the biggest challenge, I guess time. It's just, once we were going, because we had a very aggressive shooting schedule. And, there were days where we were, because it's over a 4-year span, we had an evolution of, mostly Timmy's looks were an evolution of the story. So there are some days when we'd start in 61 and we'd end in 65, or start in 63 and end in 65. So it was just that, but it's a rhythm. It's fun. It's like a roller coaster.
Yeah, I like to know too that Arianne and James worked on Girl Interrupted. So long.
That's my first film with Jim.
Yeah.
And the one you're going to see after this, for those brave enough to stay.
Donald, how about you? When did you join? When does your work start?
I started Ted walked the line, and yeah, and that was my first experience with Jim, and it was really interesting because I don't think I think you're the same person 20 years later. Your method has certainly stayed pretty true. Jim's very, very generous about time in the sense that he will ask you to flesh out a scene. He'd like to have sound effects and music and dialogue and maybe some ADR now and again, and that's how he will assess the film and the scene. And so it gives us a shot to step up to the plate, see if we can imagine what he's thinking, see if we can give him what we think he wants, and then, of course, begins the conversation back and forth.
Was there a special sneaky challenge or great success for you on this one?
Finishing this one was a great success.
We should, I mean, if you want to say that this is a huge achievement, because you finished shooting when?
We wrapped in June, mid-June, and we were done in November for the whole movie.
But it's not bad to be fast. It does make things seem more significant when you're making decisions. It's not like, oh, we'll do it later. It's more like, well, let's just work it out. Let's make it work. And I think this film worked out fine. I don't think the time was a factor at all.
I did 8 Oscar nominations, I think it did.
We included sound.
Including sound.
Yeah, we knew when we were shooting that we were trying to come out before the end of the year, and so that affected everything. I was cutting with our editors at night after we wrap, and everything was moving toward getting the movie out. One of the main reasons is, for me, was that I've had this happen. In fact, I had it happen on Walk the Line. If you finish the movie just past, the fall season, which is where we would have landed, like if we had followed a normal post, we would be finishing, we'd be done now, but it would be too late to be part of this release schedule. What happens is the movie sits for 8 months. And when a movie sits for 8 months, people think about it at the studio, people have anxiety, people look at what other people have made and start to think twice, and I don't like it. So speed is speed isn't a compromise, it's actually less of one in the sense that all the powers that be are kind of at our mercy. If we manage to finish it, they're lucky, and that what we finish is what we intend, and then we put it out. And we don't enter that. I mean, it was really painful on Walk the Line because we would have been out the same year as Ray, and we came out the next year, even though we were done for that season. And then we got referred to as the White Ray, and everyone was asking if we had made the movie together to just basically make a white version of that movie. And it was like we were done at the same time. The studio just held us back, and it was kind of just painful in the sense that everything was then perceived as us being a reaction to that movie, as opposed to being our own story that just happened to be another musical biopic at the same time.
Yeah, that's interesting. The time worked out for this one, it seems like. Things are falling into place, right? Tod, you are new to the Mangold crew. It seems like from your work and what you did on this film that you kind of are a natural fit for how this group makes movies. Can you talk a little bit about your specific job? Because I know you did some new to you things, especially with Mr. Chalamet, who sang a lot on his own.
He did sing a lot. Yeah, I am the newbie on the block. Happy to be here. I feel like I fit right in. I love strong directors, and Jim is absolutely a strong director and has a great vision. And being first boots on the ground in the sound department, I was there for the rehearsals, and we had already done all the vocal pre-recordings for the movie, but I was there for the actual rehearsals. And it was during all that time a lot was evolving. And Jim's main goal on this was to keep this movie as real as possible. So when we decided to go fully live, not using any playback, and I've done 16 music-based movies before, and I've never done a movie without music playback, without earpieces, or without a tempo. So that means that if you don't record it on the day, it's not there. Most musicals, what they do is actors will have earpieces and they'll sing along to the playback. So it gives you the option in post-production to either use the track that we recorded on set, or you can go back to the vocal pre-record, which which they do quite often. So in the early times of this, you know, you're talking about building the city streets, capturing how we're going to capture the music. The first scenes up were the scene where Bob is in the hospital, and for those acoustic scenes that didn't have performance microphones, so for all the scenes that you see, all the performance pieces, they all have period microphones. So we sourced out 42 period microphones that were all in pristine condition, and they were in chronological order from 61 to 65, giving a nice tapestry and a little change of sound for each one of the venues that we were in. But then the pieces that were done without performance microphones, we need to figure out how to record Timmy in the best way and with the best quality. And watching him in rehearsals, I realized the way he held his guitar was the same way that Bob holds the guitar, which is with the body of it high up on his body, which eliminates the possibility of using a wireless microphone. So in those early rehearsals, I talked to Timmy and I said, look, the only way that I'm going to be able to do this is if I put a microphone in your hair. And we ended up putting a microphone here, and I'd say for about 14 pieces we used that, but it was quite a finessing job to get Timmy on board, and also the hair department. They were a little apprehensive, to say the least. But then we put a microphone inside the guitar, and then multiple ambient mics. So for all of those scenes, you see them in hospital, in Pete's cabin, or in Bob's apartment, or any of that. Those were all done in that style. And then the other ones, all the performance pieces, were done with these different microphones, amplified speakers going out to the audience, a PA microphone going back to the actors so they could hear themselves, and then tons of audience microphones out there to capture all of the audience. And these guys will tell you how much the audience became a true character in this film. And it really was, and it built up. So as everything built up, the scenes just got bigger and bigger. And even New York City gets bigger and bigger. The first time you arrive in New York City, it's more subdued, and then by 1965 it's a much louder city, and we created all sorts of sound to add to those scenes. So we learned early on that if we took the sound out, like we did one take where we were filming in Newport, and we had dialogue happening on the wings, in the wings, and normally you would drop the dialogue out, or drop the music out so you can capture the dialogue, and we did that once, and the entire air went out of the scene. And from that moment on, we never dropped sound out of anything. On the contrary, we actually added in sound. We added in sound for the Cuban Missile Crisis, for the street scenes, anything that we could be putting sound in and adding in for the actors, to help the actors, was really, really instrumental in creating that energy for them. So,
Yeah.
very different approach than any other musical I've done.
Right, challenging and layered. Ted, when do you come in? I'm wondering if you can speak a little bit to Dylan's music in general. I don't know, pro wrestling, some of the rights or the licensing, like what that has been like, and then just kind of your unique challenges as well.
Well, the great thing about this project is that they had cleared all of Dylan for the movie in advance, so that was dealt with, not the problem. When I came on, the first thing I got was a playlist of songs that were going to be in the movie. And that was when I thought, wow, this is a daunting task. It must have been 50, 60 songs that they were going to perform, film and perform in the movie, which I've never seen that many live performed songs. So I'm already thinking, this is a massive undertaking. Then I got Tod here, getting 50 mics on takes. I'm thinking, I got 60 songs, I've got 50 mics. This is a massive undertaking. And then we get brought on all of Jim's movies, luckily, and this is something everyone should do. We get brought on while they're in production, so we can help, fill the tracks out and coordinate with the picture department as the movie's being shot. So the first task actually is working with the picture department on the musical numbers. Right? We come in, they've got these daunting, non-click tracked, live performances. So it becomes a real collaborative effort. And again, to Jim's point, we all kind of work in each other's spaces a lot. Our picture editors are fantastic with music, right? Drew Buckland and Scott Morris, they were fantastic with music. And they weren't precious about it. They let me come sit in with them. We work out things like the complicated montages. You look at the Hard Rain montage or the Don't Think Twice montage. Those are really hard to kind of get to look fluid and land with both the drama and the songs feeling, seamless. So that's the very first thing, and right from the start, they're on set, they're shooting, we're working back in post and just trying to make the thing come alive with all the materials that everyone's given us. And, you know, 50 didn't end up being the number of songs in the movie. I mean, we ended up having, I think, 130 song starts in the movie, which is the most I've ever seen on a movie. And a lot of that is, you know, diegetic music that's in the world. So much of this movie is about not just the performances, which are a huge part of the movie, obviously, but the world itself, bringing New York to life, bringing the sound of the time to life, and also how the music is affecting Bob, the world of the music that's around. So many of those choices that we figured out in post as well were, you know, a huge part of even before Jim gets back, and then we have a real dialogue about how we're gonna, you know, move forward.
Yeah. Can you all, I'm wondering in your perfectionist, I'm just gonna assume perfectionism since, you know, elite artists that we have here. Can you watch the film now or kind of see the reception it has and some of the accolades? Can you appreciate and be like proud that it's done and wrapped, or do you see it and then sort of still thinking in your mind, oh, I could have tweaked that? Like, are you okay to say when it's done, or do you constantly?
Both happens to me.
Yeah.
It depends, like, it depends on the theater. If the theater is, if I'm hearing all the stuff we did, half the time, you know, what's so painful is that every theater has a different character, and for sometimes inexplicable reasons, things vanish in one theater, or the film looks milky here, or you know, it's, you go theater to theater, and when you get to a theater where they've got shit specced out pretty good, you generally let go. I generally let go because I've you know, there's nothing I rue not doing differently on the film at this point, at least that I could possibly change at this point.
That makes sense. How about you?
I would say this, of all the films I've worked on, I've seen this film the most because, and I'm emotional every time I see it, because of the film, not because of my work, but, you know, it's not like I'm sad that something didn't go right. I'm very happy with it. I'm very happy with it. I think I marvel, every time I've seen it, I marvel at how things, that I was maybe unsure about ended up really singing in a good way, and that's just a testament to Jim's eye and to these brilliant actors, and you know, bringing, you know, all the energy we put into telling this story to life. So I get caught up in it. So I'm very pleased with it for sure.
Well, the way we work, and the way most filmmakers work in post, is that every screening is an opportunity. And by that, I mean that we use each screening to dig down and see what else we can do and what else we can add. And, you know, it's almost to the point where, I mean, I have notes. I could add some things. But, there are notes that we have that we didn't have time to address. They haven't heard the film, but it does give you an opportunity every time you view it to add something. But as an old ham saw that I say, and it's like we don't finish, we just stop.
Interesting.
I think for me, I'm very happy with this film came out, and I can't say that about most films, but I think a lot of it has to do with the work that was done on post-production, because we didn't try to polish this movie, we didn't try to make it into something that it wasn't. We kept it as real and raw as possible, and the style that we filmed in gave us that flexibility to create that energy. And one of the things that Jim would do, Jim's super in tune with sound. And for me, when I'm mixing my tracks, I always mix one track that gets sent along with dailies. So that's the one that goes out, so when the studios see it, all that. And Jim was so fine-tuned on what that sound was like. He'd come over to me with everything else that's going on. He'd come over and say, I need to hear a little bit more guitar on this little piece right here. And I have no idea how you have the bandwidth to focus on things like that.
It wasn't working without it.
I know, but I mean, you have 19 other things that you're focusing on.
It's all about getting it to work. But yes, I mean, you're being very kind. But it's more like it's not so much bandwidth. You're just hooked into part of what, you know, the music is part of the dialogue of the movie. I mean, so much of the way we talk about movies affects the way we think about movies, and so much of the way we talk about movies sometimes is a distortion field that makes us unable to actually perceive how the movie's actually put together. Like people talk about musical numbers versus dialogue scenes. Well, I don't think that way. I don't think we ever thought that way making the movie. I mean, you have scenes where, what I mean by that is that the music is just dialogue on pitch, right? Why is it music? Why is it, it's a number? I'm not making West Side Story. Everyone's not breaking in a song, and Andre Previn isn't suddenly playing. So it's not that kind of movie. So this is two people in their underwear playing a song and talking. Why is the song a number? Like, why is, it should be imperceivable, actually. It should feel like these are people who live with their guitars, who singing and speaking lyrically is a part of their life that exists all the time. So you're trying to always break down, because movies are a kind of, are a production world that is built on vocabulary, but the vocabulary can distort things. And one of them would be this, that it's like, and that's why, you know, Ted's called the music editor, but he was involved in so much else. And everything the music is doing is also changing the way that, quote, dialogue scenes are playing. But, I mean, it brings, just to say it, it's another interesting point, you know, and obviously it's somewhat justified, enough people feel it, but the whole concept of Dylan as enigmatic or mysterious, to me, is in itself a kind of mysterious observation, because I can't think of another artist who has put out over 600 self-written songs and then released them on 55 records over 60 years, written autobiographies and essays, and toured his entire life, and yet is talked about like he's Howard Hughes. It doesn't make any sense to me. I mean, how many songs did Frank Sinatra write? And all these songs of Dylan's are personal. They reflect who he is. So why are we so unsatisfied with how much he's given us when his productivity is volcanic? And I think that says as much about us, that the work is so provocative and contains so many questions, and then we want answers. Like it's a Night Shyamalan movie, like tell us what it is. And it's like, that's not what he's making. And you don't get the answers. And that's not, and we don't get to, I didn't make the movie to put on headphones like you wear, people wear now. It makes me so sad at museums, and they stare at paintings with some voice telling them what the painting means and how much it sold for. And I feel like we're robbing art sometimes by creating so much exposition about it, that the work itself speaks for itself. And Dylan, in that way, part of my own position entering the movie was to try not to acknowledge that whole enigma mysterioso thing, because I don't think it was so prevalent in those early years, but also I think we've created that as much as he did, and maybe he's surfed it now that we created it a little bit. But I do think that it's interesting to bring that to the table, because it was a big part of my own mindset.
Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. I was gonna ask you about the specific set of the story, this chapter one, but I feel like you answered that. I wanna ask you about your approach with actors. So many of my favorite, I feel like Mr. Mangold has directed the best performances for so many of our favorite people. Hugh Jackman, Christian Bale, Joaquin and Timothy both have Oscar mentioned. I'm just wondering if your approach with actors and kind of, if you have a language with them, or is it part of the collaborative process, just like anything else?
Well, I don't know. It would sound like I was fooling myself to say I have a language, but I love actors, and one of the things I also feel like is that we as filmmakers, we tend to hang out with other filmmakers and other people who are behind the scenes, and there's a kind of segregation that exists a lot of times, and that, you know, when an actor, like there's a term, when actors are not a problem, right? They're called professional. They're professional. And it's this word that I find gross, like it's kind of this weird thing, like generally they're wild beasts, but this one's a good one. And, but also because I think it comes from, I think we build these walls. You know, we build these walls, even as, you know, young filmmakers tend to hang out with other young filmmakers. They talk lenses, they talk psychological theory and screenplays. They talk all sorts of stuff, but they don't do stand-up, and they don't do plays, and they don't try storytelling classes or do groundlings classes, or it's like most of us are really anal retentive and interior and hide from that part, even though it's the most significant relationship as a filmmaker you're gonna have, is with these people who will be the face and passion and heart of your film. And also bear a huge amount of stress, that whatever we do, and whatever I cut into the movie ultimately, they're gonna bear the judgment first, 50 feet high on a screen. And that's scary to me, and I think, and might produce in me slightly eccentric behavior once in a while. And there's an awful lot of judging that goes on in all the work we do in mass media and mass entertainment, but also specifically for actors, physical judgments, age judgments, just all sorts of judgments about them that are part of the dialogue with the screen, but also cruel. And I love actors, and I think they may feel that I feel like they are my crew as well, and I don't, if there was, the last thing I'd say is, the simplest thing I'd say is that I think the perception that acting is lying is not even slightly correct, but 100% incorrect. Acting is telling the truth. Good actors, I get to work with really good ones, are really good at telling the truth. That's what they have to do to survive the magnification, for their performance to survive that magnification. What does that mean in terms of your relationship with them? Well, it means they are really good at telling the truth, but they live in a world of utter bullshit most of the time. With people telling them, you're so awesome, you're beautiful, and like, you don't know me, how do you love me? They live in a world of that, and also, I don't need just fans, I need press who are saying to you, well, you're so interesting, and then they read the article and it's like, nasty. And you live in a world where you realize there's a lot of untruth, and they have very good bullshit detectors, actors, to survive in scenes with each other. And also, so what do is I just don't lie to them. I don't hide stuff from them. I never hide stuff from them. I try to let them know whatever I'm going through. If I'm falling behind, if I really think this is a bad idea, I don't have time to try it, I say exactly that. I don't try and speak like there's some kind of Siberian tiger and go, maybe you would want to try. You need to move over here and try it here. I'm just direct the way I would be to Ari or anyone else. Honestly, and if they think that's a bad idea, they go, Jim, I want to try one more time over here. But we don't exist in a specialized language made for unique aliens. We all exist in the same pool of honesty. And I do believe that translates and brings that more to the screen, but I don't know if that's a method or just a kind of a way of looking at my job.
Yeah.
I will add to that, Jim, because
Thanks.
that attitude and that belief in his actors extends to his crew, and there's a level of, you can always speak up with Jim, you can always have an idea, there's an equitable energy on the set where you never feel isolated from what's happening, and I mean, there are days when we're working on scenes that probably, you know, the actor needs space to do that scene, private space before and while we're waiting. But it is a real testament to a Jim Mangold set in that you feel very, not only invested, but you feel you're part of this thing. And that is a very unusual feeling for a crew member. Actually, it's a lot of times you feel siloed.
Yeah.
So
Again,
it's a great
it
place.
speaks to your, the people that work with you for so long. We're coming up close on our time, and only cutting it short because we have people that need to get something, but you have another movie to see. I'm hoping to kind of gently end on a little talk about Walk the Line. Everyone here, except for Tom, worked on Walk the Line. I'm wondering if there's, especially since you have a group here that's gonna see it, if there's something you in particular would like to point out before people are gonna see it. I'm wondering if we would have had a complete unknown without Walk the Line, just kind of,
I can speak to one thing.
yes.
On Off the Line, the first movie I did with Jim, I was in the sound department working with John. I was not in music, and I cut a lot of the crowds in here. And into crowds being a character is 100% in Walk the Line, the same way you'll see it in Complete Unknown. It was a big voice in the movie, the way they reacted to him, and all that stuff, and the fact that Jim trusted me to get that right on that movie, and getting a primer on Jim's aesthetic right there, which is still immediate. It's all no bullshit, whether it's the sound of a tractor going down a hill, if it's the sound of a footstep, it has to have character, it has to be immediate, it can't be some movie sound, some big whooshy boomy thing. It always has to have impact and character. The sound in that movie has so much character, it's so much part of the storytelling, and you'll feel it, I think, pretty immediately.
And certainly this movie wouldn't have been made. Some of the technical decisions in this movie and strategic decisions, like the actors singing, would have been harder. I could push that through on this film with a lot more confidence because I had done it already. That was something that because you start a movie like this and everyone's instantly, well, can they sing? Are they going to sing? And the belief, kind of similar to everything else, you just believe they can, and if they can't, we'll deal with it. But giving great actors a high bar and letting them reach for it. There's a philosophical interesting thing, which is that Walk the Line is kind of a classic tale of trauma and how it affects the lead character and his ability to love and his addiction, and in some ways follows very clean classical lines of him coming to terms, having to come to terms with that addiction in the late early third act or late second act to kind of open up later. I knew I couldn't make that movie again, partly thanks to Judd Apatow, but partly because I didn't think it would work with Bob Dylan, because I don't think he has that kind of trauma, other than the aspect of genius. And what I mean by that is just not just the gift of it, but the burden of it, that it separates you from everyone and becomes a way that you can never completely connect because you're tuned into a radio station no one else is receiving. And that can produce both a loneliness for you and a loneliness for those who are with you. And one last thing I'd love to say is on the Walk Hard thing is just that I always feel, I really enjoyed that movie, but I always feel so bad when I see people say, like, how can someone make one of those movies again after Walk Hard? And I was like, that's really a stupid thing to say. How could someone make a Western after Blazing Saddles? How could someone make 28 Frankenstein movies after Young Frankenstein? I mean, do a double feature of Young Frankenstein and Nosferatu. I mean, it's like, you can't give up. Just because I subscribed to Mad Magazine when I was a kid, they satirized everything. You mean we just can't make any movie that someone satirized ever again? And we have to give up all tropes in perpetuity because someone made fun of them? I think the beauty of movies and the beauty of storytelling, part of it, we've turned the word trope into a word that means bad. It's not what it means. And the reality is that storytelling of all kinds, superhero movies, I promise you, they've got scenes they do over and over again, putting that shit on, and the belt in the cave, and the secret girlfriend, and the two identities. And give me a break, that's what movies are. And that we should get over that. Like, we shouldn't be so self-conscious. We have to be able to tell movies about feeling things and not live in such a snarky world. Anyone who's ever made fun or identified the bones of something makes it impossible to ever make it again. Anyway, I refuse to acknowledge that. I love old-fashioned movies.